very carefully. And I'm going to look at Dr. Perryman because she used to be a high school person.
Yeah.
So they've managed it delicately, I would say. So if the student was going out into a classroom, they were not being supported in the classroom because the teacher couldn't go with them. And so if I am going out with the student, I can sit with them, I can keep them on track, I can give them de-escalation, some tactics to keep them within the classroom. But if they're there by themselves, that can't happen. And so then, as they tend to escalate or get off task, just being disruptive because of the nature of the emotional support, then they're generally sent back to the emotional support classroom. So when that happens, then they are not mainstreamed as much as they could be or should be, based on extra support. That is really the goal of a TA, is to help get kids out into the general population more with support.
But you said that every other learning support classroom you do have a teaching assistant?
In emotional
Yeah.
support.
In emotional support.
Emotional support and an intensive learning support all have teaching assistants, excuse me, except for the high school.
And we talked at the last work session, we have 5 to 6 learning support teachers in each building.
That sounds about, I mean, it's about a little bit higher, but
I
it
think
sounds
that's all
about
has
right.
to
I think there's about 4 at high school. It's pretty close to it.
yeah.
If you say district-wide, 15, yeah. So that's about right.
That's currently before the bridge.
Yeah, and I wish it would be the same, but, I mean, we still have to go back to those schools in middle school. Once that's
That,
yeah.
I think hearing 5 or 6 sounds like you are, like the general public that doesn't understand. That sounds adequate already.
Well,
5 or 6 what? Learning support teachers
Yeah.
or TAs?
learning support teachers. So at the high school, we have 3 learning support teachers who go out into classrooms to co-teach with other teachers. And then we have our emotional support, learning support teacher. So that's only 4. And she does not go out to co-teach, as she has kids coming back into her classroom all the time. At the middle school, I want to say they only have 3 or 4 learning support teachers. And they support reading and math, and also in the classroom and co-teaching, and then also in a pull-out setting. Students come to them for help. The elementary, I want to say, has 4 or 5 learning support teachers, and then also their reading specialists. So that might be why it seems like there's more at the elementary, but like I don't believe any building has 6 learning support teachers.
Almost go on Carol.
And
Sure.
yeah.
Dwayne asked, she said 5 or 6, I think 5.
You know what, I'm going to take that back. There are 5 at the high school. I forgot independent learning. I apologize. Yeah, there is 5.
So just as Dr. Barron shared, just to help kind of close this loop, what winds up happening with our emotional support, students demonstrate behaviors and have behaviors that are unique to them. So putting a plan together to be able to be supported in a regular classroom, that's their goal of special ed. Get a student out in a regular classroom, learn content, understanding what that we can help them with. So a TA helps double that and increase that opportunity to make sure somebody can follow that behavior plan.
Can some of the other learning support, didn't you say that they go help into the classroom, they help students in their actual classroom?
But that's assigned. So let me back up a little bit. So, because when you were saying learning support, I was thinking of the ones who are going out into the classrooms, co-teach, and then pull the kids back in. So, and each level also has the intensive learning and the emotional support. So when we schedule those learning support teachers to go out into the classrooms, they are supporting the kids who have the IEPs for learning disabilities. And so we're very strategic in scheduling to make sure the teachers are going into those classrooms support.
Because that is a legal requirement, is it not?
It is a legal
Yes.
requirement, yes, to mainstream students as much as possible
And
on
they must
grade level
receive,
content.
and they must receive their hours.
Yep, so we have to calculate their hours, that they are out in regular education and in special education. Now, that is not to say that if I was a learning support teacher and I went out to a biology classroom that is already being co-taught, yes, I can receive some support from that learning support teacher. But if I'm not in biology and I need to go to chemistry, well, we don't co-teach chemistry, so there's not going to be a learning support teacher in chemistry. So you really, I know it sounds like you can double dip, but you really cannot. Those teachers are 3 learning support teachers that go out to really support the kids with learning disabilities through their IEPs, are focused on the, like really the math, ELA, science in 9th grade, maybe science in 5th grade. They're really focused on that instruction to really try to minimize the gaps that they have in their reading and math due to their IEP. So they're not going out into some of these other courses. But we have kids who want to take a tech ed course. Our learning support teachers aren't going down to tech ed, but a TA is going to go to tech ed. Stacy Snyder, who I think all of you know, goes into family consumer science almost every year to help support people there.
So how does, because you're talking about the emotional support that's more behavioral, how does our behavior specialists fit in into the students?
Yes, okay.
Well, they do, yeah,
They help and they assist.
but they're not TAs.
They assist in the classroom with the teachers, and they also assist in other locations. So we do have a secondary behavior specialist funded by the TCCD grant that supports 6 through 12 across the board. So she can do 2 projects, middle school and high school. So she helps primarily offset that, and then she also goes out and helps in addition.
This isn't mandated.
A TA? No.
No, but that's the reason you can't grant people from other positions, because they have legal requirements to provide students and services. They're on their legal documents that an IEP or a 504, and those services must be rendered. So if that's what the learning specialists are helping with, and then those students, are you calling them learning specialists? Those students, that's what they get by law. That's why you can't just pull someone off and send them, to some other department for, a couple hours or somewhere else.
So there's no debate of need, requirement, the legal aspect of it,
Well,
all that. Thing is, pay for it. At a $42 million budget, and you're talking $61,000. Got to be able to find somewhere out of the 87% of the mandated budget that there's the rest, to be able to find to see how we can supply and fill all that need and make sure that it's taken care of. At the same time, be able to see if we can make that work.
We've managed it to this point. If the committee wants to eliminate a TA, this was an ask, this was something that would provide for that classroom in the event we weren't able to, with all of the things that we do, provide that education for our student. If we don't meet that IEP that's provided, we could be outlined for a compensatory
did you not
education.
just get rid of the full FTE?
That's what I'm saying, if you got rid of full FTE, why didn't you raise taxes for a teaching assistant? Why, if you've got $109,000 covered there?
This is, right now, it's just a priority.
Yeah.
Get the taxes yet,
We haven't touched
and then,
that.
so,
We're not, it wouldn't be an elimination of a teacher's assistant, we added a teacher's assistant.
Correct, we would, yeah.
What is our class size?
Well, I was going to say the class size is growing.
salary and that.
What is
Yes,
it?
they are.
There's 2 different questions you're going on, I'm sorry. No.
Go ahead. What are you talking about?
What is the class size right now?
I would have to look up the class size right now, but I also know that with the 8th grade population that's moving up, I believe Carolyn said 12 to 15 next year in that classroom.
I'm
But I I would defer to her numbers
Right.
on Monday. I would really ask
Right.
that you ask her that question.
But in terms of the total student population, what is the full grade sizes right now in high schools? I think it's declined slightly. Just to give a
I'm not
point
sure.
of reference.
I'm not sure the question.
What is the class size in terms of like how many kids are in each grade?
Like graduating,
And
graduating
graduating
class, I'm
classes?
sorry.
Yeah.
Like around 130. Like we have a small class coming up next year, but yeah.
We have both.
Around 130.
Right.
But like fifth grade right now, it's like 100.
It's a range.
Yeah.
I think this was the class where the number could be high or low all throughout the whole day.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we could have completely different circumstances next year than we have this year.
Well, we know that we have an increase in students, as our graduates say. One of the flexibilities that allows us to get kids to move in and out of the classroom is the number of professionals that we have working with them. So if we only have one teacher in the classroom, we only have 12 to 15 kids, then that teacher can't go out as long as one student is in that classroom. So having a TA to support that one teacher with 12 to 15 students increases the opportunity to get the teacher out in the classroom, to support that IEP, to support those students, or the TA out, or a combination, and therefore keep that number in the room at any one time to a minimum.
So how will we pay for this? You said that we have gotten that. So how will we, I can't tell you what it was cost.
So the part of the priorities is linked to, if we wanted all the priorities, obviously the admin assistant, the top one came off. So if we want to single out just the TA, yes, it can be used for the attrition of the position to offset with this. So it's more of a.
What you want, which is, okay.
Correct, it's, right now, it's just a priority, we haven't linked it to anything, it will be linked in subsequent slides, but right now it's just, is it making the priority list to be kept in the budget?
Why don't we just talk about getting rid of that athletic expense for the softball field? That's a whole lot of money. Why don't we just get rid of that right now? If that's, if we're gonna argue over a TA for secondary emotional support room that might have 14 or 15 kids in it, helps them get out in the classroom, $61,000, that's a steal. If we can move kids out of that classroom and give them the help they need to get into the regular classroom.
We're not
I don't see
saying
what we're
not to do
haggling
that.
about here.
We're not asking or saying that any of that does not get done. That's not the issue.
Then-
The issue is how do we fund it?
Well,
And
we
if
just
they've
got
already
rid of
said
the
they
full-time,
can.
we just got rid of the full-time employee.
Okay,
So
so-
there you go.
So there's no
Done.
problem. There's no problem.
Okay, all right. Then let's move on.
Just the, so we are including that in the budget, so when we talk about the next couple slides or the total budget, all the priorities are in there to show what it would cost for all in. So when we remove these or add these, we'll have to reflect that in the subsequent communication, so I just want to make that. So right now, the TA, just want to agree that that's making it continue forward in the budget.
Keep that in there for every, is that 61,000 just salary or salary and benefits?
It's salary and benefits,
So what would the total be on that?
Yep. So then, the other portion is equipment and supplies. The past several years, I've tried to create cycles, so it's predictable for departments. One of the departments that requested was maintenance. We're looking at replacing outdated water wheel. In this particular replacement cycle, that water wheel is $60,000. Part of the equipment cycle is who has variable, he's creating a 5-year plan of what equipment is getting to the end of life. So this cycle would be somewhat in a long-term nature of holding. It's not a one-time purchase and then it goes away next year. He has a plan to replace several items over the next couple of years. So the 60,000 the next few years kept in the budget. So that's why it's on this priority request in this fashion.
Yeah.
Yes, so if you ever notice on the baseball field or the track, he has the water shooting out and itself in it. That it's been around for 30 years and it's getting some wear and tear.
You think we can get another year out of it?
I think anything we can always try. We can't guarantee it or we'll make it.
Baker doesn't think.
It's not part of that athletic program?
No, this is part of the maintenance and grounds. priorities, we just need either a head nod or acknowledgement that they are continuing within the budget.
So yes. Did you talk about the Chromebook recycling?
Not yet, we're just looking for you to press one by one.
So that's just the
That's
water?
the water wheel,
Yes.
$16,000.
$16,000 for water.
Okay, I'll come over with my word in the morning.
I'm with Steve, I think that we should see if this.
See, we can get another year out of it. I just think we should just try to get another year out of it.
I agree, Victor doesn't come to us very often. He really does.
They're very
And I
close to
think-
the end of life.
I mean, Victor gets the money and time out of everything. You know that man, you know, does his best to do everything. And so I don't know if that's good.
We, you know, I just think that if we can try to get another year out of it.
Well, ask you, ask you.
I think some of the opposition to that is, what happens when it breaks and he doesn't have the budget to pay for it next year?
Give them the Amazon, free shipping.
That's why we have it in the budget, and if it doesn't break and he doesn't buy it, then it's not in there, but that's part of that conversation. If it does, I will come to the board to request an addition to the budget to add that back in. So it's, now or later is more or less.
When equipment that you use to maintain facilities gets to a spot where you're spending more time working on your equipment so that it maintains the facilities, it takes you away from other areas that could potentially.
And 30 years they've been doing that.
Correct.
So another year is probably wouldn't hurt.
Unless it breaks.
Unless
We
it
didn't
breaks.
budget for it, then.
Unless
boy,
it
that
breaks.
was just a thing.
If you're willing to gamble on that for $16,000,
Roll dice.
that's your decision.
I don't know, what do you?
Hey, you say it's just $16,000, but from the time I got back on the board, it's constant stuff that we're voting on to put in.
Well, and you know, part of that is because, you know, for 30 years, you don't keep things up. You don't spend money on your infrastructure. You don't do that. And the payment comes due. We are unfortunately the ones that are here now that are paying for things that didn't get paid for 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I mean, that's part of the problem. I mean, we pushed off that building for decades and decades and decades, and that's why we ended up where we were, yeah. And that's why it ended up costing, you know, what, a third or half of what it would cost to renovate the old building as it would to build a new and renovate, you know? And that's why we found ourselves in that position of having to make that hard choice. So, you know, why we should save future generations from making the same difficult choices we now have to make. I don't like passing things down the road. I like to shoulder the burden and responsibility myself.
But so this item says equipment replacement cycle. So what I'm assuming that you're going to do is put $16,000 in the budget for every year.
Correct.
For
He has a
another
5-year.
water wheel.
Yeah.
Part of the request was to make a 5-year plan for replacement at end of life cycle. So next year, if we would furlough this to next year, this could be a $50,000 request because this next piece of equipment is $40,000. Like, each equipment has a different, so we do $16,000 this year and increase the budget to hold for 16 and something even larger. We have at least 16,000 groundwork to apply to that.
So Tom, what I'm hearing, if we got a new water wheel, would that save on the amount of water that we actually put out? That'd be more.
You gotta want to last no matter what, brother.
You're trying to sell it.
New equipment costs less to maintain and is more efficient to provide for the maintenance.
Yeah,
of
but you know
new
what,
buildings.
stuff made 30 years ago is more well-made than the stuff they put out
I
now.
don't disagree with that.
Over there.
I also
Until it
can't
breaks.
can't guarantee it'll make it a full baseball season.
Is there,
I think that we're doing some of this backwards. I think you need to tell us how we're gonna pay for it, where we have the funds to do it before we say, yes, we're gonna approve it.
Well, I think part of what we're doing, I don't disagree, Nick. One of the things that I've asked Tom to do is to identify priorities. What are the priorities for the board? So looking at that and saying, what is it that the board wants us to prioritize? We heard tonight, we want to prioritize student learning in IEP classrooms for our learning support. That was a priority that I heard from this group. So as we continue to move forward, if it's not a priority to provide an equipment maintenance cycle that's fine, we can move forward. But that is the process that we're looking at, because we will get to the money to take a look at how do the priorities, and we can all work together to figure out which priorities we
The
can
thing is,
take.
we've got to move it forward now, and then we figure out, you know, I mean, the ask is for a revenue increase.
It's more than your
But
percentages.
the question is, we don't know what that expense is gonna come to be until the priorities are set. I can't attribute how much revenue we have or don't have until I know the number that we're trying to achieve. So I need to say, what's making it, so I can say, this is how much we need by what made the priority.
And by authorizing that at this point to your priority, we still decide how we're going to pay for it.
Yep. We
You
still
have until
That's right.
June when the final
Absolutely.
budget is passed.
Absolutely. It's just establishing priorities. What do we think is important?
But
We determine what's
so it's clear, it's not
The
like.
water wheel,
That's,
Is it-
it's, the
I would say
essence of it
this.
is the equipment cycle
Is an
replacement.
equipment replacement cycle important? So that we can replace our equipment on an annual basis. Is that
And
important?
we make that preparation while we're putting that and getting prepared for, you know, the future boards. It will already be taken care of. All they have to do is keep up the cycle.
It's not
And it just, yeah.
different than our technology lease cycle or our prior bus replacement cycle, or any of the other replacement cycles we were planning or had in the budget at that time. This is just, we never had this, this is a request above and beyond prior.
And I think this is smart budget, right? So you have
Very
your picture. Yeah, very, right.
And then with your priority, you can figure out within
Right.
our existing
That's right.
pool or budget, we can figure out how we can pay for that.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So, you want to finish the other two, and then we'll,
So the next one is that digital document management system. So when MAMS